Chapter 35. Manablade. Eckhart. Summary. Eckhart is worried for Myne's safety, so he gives her a manablade for her protection. Earlier that morning, Eckhart arrived at Myne's house on the day of the tea party. Uninvited and unexpected, true, but he deemed his business urgent enough to ignore convention. It was imperative that he see Myne before she went to his mother's tea party.
Welcome, my lord.
Franz said as he invited him in.
Lady Myne is at the moment preparing to visit Elvira for a tea party.
I'm aware,
Eckhart replied.
but I wish to speak with her before she departs. Can you please let her know I'm here?
Certainly, my lord.
Fran led him to the now familiar green parlor.
Would you care for some tea and refreshments on the way?
Eckhart shook his head.
No, thank you. I ate earlier.
Very well. Please have a seat. I will let Lady Myne know you are here.
Franz said with a nod and left the room. Eckhart didn't bother sitting. He walked to the nearest window, leaned against the frame, and looked out at the sun-bathed garden below as he stewed over the issue at hand.
I should go with her. It would be unconventional and an affront to my mother, but I have a duty and protecting her comes first. What? Why didn't Myne tell everything?
Tell me.
I'm sorry, that's kind of
Yeah,
a little awkward.
Yeah, tell me.
Why didn't Myne tell me everything? Had I known all the details, I would have.
He would have murdered Cornelius for sure, and would have made sure that his friend Hartmut, as well as Cornelius's detestable fiancée, would have met a slow and painful death. Eckhart thought back to that time in the garden, when Myne had told him about the archnobles who had come into her store and wreaked havoc. He had been indignant, nay, outraged on her behalf, and had meted out justice accordingly. Or so he had thought. But it hadn't been until just this morning, when he'd been talking to Eustace, that his old friend had filled in the gaps for him. And as a result, Eckhart was out for blood. He would attend the tea party with Myne and guard her. He made sure no one would ever disrespect her again. The moment Lady Dolores so much as lifted a finger against Myne, no, the moment she so much as looked in Myne's direction, he would strike her down right there and then. Unfortunately for him, but fortunately for Lady Dolores, when Myne came downstairs to greet him, and he told her his plans to attend the tea party with her, she put a quick end to his grand scheme.
But Myne, what if something happens to you? You don't know how vicious this girl is. Eustace told me of her ruthless reputation and measures she took to get rid of any competition in order to secure my brother.
Myne gave him a calm smile.
Oh, I am aware. I've also done some research on my own. But I do not think it will come to that today. She won't try anything in front of Lady Elvira and Lady Florencia.
But
Myne put a hand in his arm.
Eckhart,
yes.
I need to do this. If I am to enter noble society, then I need to prove myself equal to the task and face this myself.
She smiled sadly.
As wonderful as it as wonderful oh my god, I can't read. As wonderful as it would be to have a protector with me at all times, you won't always be there able to shield me from people. Malicious look, words, and gossip. I need to learn to face them at some point, and your mother has been kind enough to arrange this for me.
Eckhart sighed, unable to refute her words. Yet he still felt uneasy. He looked into Myne's golden eyes. They were so sure and resolute, yet she was so young and ignorant of the ways of nobility. How could he abandon her now? He'd never forgive himself if something were to happen to her. And it dawned on him then and there that at some point in the past couple of weeks, Myne had somehow become a very important person in his life. One whose safety, happiness, and well-being was important to him. She was no longer someone he had to take care of out of a sense of duty, or because his master had ordered him to. From the bottom of his heart, he truly wanted to protect this girl who had become... What was she to him now? She wasn't family. He wouldn't know what to do with a little sister. And she wasn't his lover either. No one would ever have that place in his life, now that Heidemarie was gone. Now that he thought about it, however, he realized that after all these months of obligatory visits, of evenings spent eating dinner together, reading together, and laughing over drinks together, Myne and he had become friends.
I don't have many female friends. I think she might be the only one.
Completely unaware how his world had once more shifted in a fundamental way because of her, Myne smiled at him and held his hand.
I am thankful for your offer, though. Believe me, it means a lot to me. More than you'll ever know.
Eckhart sighed once more, resigned.
Well, if you say so.
A chime rang in the distance, marking 4:30 bell. She would have to go to that tea party soon, wielding no weapon and no shield save for his mother's bejeweled fan. Eckhart did not want to offend his mother, but in his humble opinion, he would much rather have Myne carry something far more pointy and far more useful against an armed opponent in case of an attack. He blinked, remembering something, and suddenly smiled.
If you insist on going by yourself, then I want you to take something to protect yourself with.
He spun on his heel and walked out of the room. No, I mean...
Yeah, I was muted. I forgot. Eckhart?
Damn it, Noemi!
Shush it! I get it. I make mistakes. I do it all the time. Anyway. Eckhart? Where are you going?
Myne said behind him. Eckhart didn't bother to turn. He just kept walking and made his way to the front door.
I have something for you, but it's in my estate. Can you wait for me? I'm gonna go get it.
Sure, just don't be too long. I have to be at your mother's house before 5th bell.
Eckhart was back soon with the manablade he'd retrieved from his hidden room. He instructed her how to use it, had her add on some of her mana so that it would work as intended, and then sent her off to her tea party, waving at her as her carriage drove away. He still did not feel entirely at ease, but she had asked him to respect her decision and to stay away from the tea party. She could trust him, and he, in turn, would trust her word that all would be well and that she'd return safely.
Please be safe, Myne.
End of chapter. All right, let's just let's just delve right in.
Now, I don't know if Rat Tempest is listening, but now I have the image of, I don't know if you guys have seen this short video. Like there's a kid running around, and then her mom asks him, "What are you holding?" And then the kid screams, "A knife!" And she says, "No."
Yes.
And?
Wait.
Yes, I imagine knife. Yeah, the little kid is Myne, and then Florencia is the one asking her, like, "What are you holding there?"
A manablade.
No.
Well, so Myne has a manablade yeah. So I don't know. What do you guys think of Eckhart giving Myne a manablade just like then? Like, do you think that's a safe, wise thing to have done?
I agree with him.
You agree with him?
I already typed what I thought about.
Free! Stabby! Stabby!
So I think Myne is more mature and responsible now than she is in canon. I don't think
Oh
she'd,
yeah.
she'd accidentally do bad things and get herself in trouble.
Yes, yes.
Yukihime points out, bringing the manablade to the tea party is a little like bringing a gun to a knife fight. Hey, but Eckhart is being Eckhart, okay? Let him do his thing for his peace of mind.
Exactly. We
So,
love
Yeah.
so
anyway.
Magpie's
posted the
little
correct
amused
video.
chuckle makes me feel not so confident in my assumption.
Well, we'll see. Let's see what happens with the stabby. Mm-hmm.
Well,
All right, let's do this.
this is a long chapter.
Now, Fergie does ask, whose blade was it? Eckhart's? Yes, Eckhart. So Eckhart brought it from his house. He had it in his hidden room. For some reason, it was in his hidden room. We'll see. We'll see. You'll learn more about
He
it.
has a knife.
Yeah, he has.
So
the
I just
A
saw the
collection of
summary
knives.
for this chapter and I feel bad.
Let's just do this, you guys. Chapter
You should have read
36, Veritas, introducing Myne's sentient weapon. Ooh, to those of you who ever said Sten Luke, maybe? I don't know. Let's see. Let's read
It
it.
could
Read
be.
and find out.
But also not.
Mine has a certain track record with mana blades.
As Myne's carriage turned the corner and disappeared from sight, Eckhart briefly contemplated waiting for her return right where he stood, but ultimately decided against it. His mother's tea parties could go on for exceedingly long, and he wasn't sure he could stand still and quietly wait for Myne without working himself to a frenzy. Eckhart was too anxious to hole up at home, and Lord Ferdinand had no need of him presently, as he was at the castle with Lord Sylvester on family business. Eustace had left the city after their earlier talk, having mentioned something about flying north to gather some autumn ingredients. Joining him would be a fruitful endeavor, but it would also be too tiresome, since his friend was planning to camp out, and Eckhart was not fond of spending the night exposed to the elements. Plus, he'd likely be worrying about Myne all the time. So Eckhart did the only thing he could think of and headed to the castle training grounds, his home away from home, and the only place in all the world where he could clear his mind without worrying about social niceties and noble conventions. It was the one place where, despite their knight's code of honor, might was ultimately right. After arriving, he changed into practice clothes right away. As it was Earth Day, there were very few people around, just knight attendants who were tending and repairing the practice gear, raking the sand in various training grounds, and caring for and cleaning out the cages of the fey beasts used for hunting. He knew all of the people there by sight, though most were too young for him to have ever spoken to. Still, as he went into the gear room, he nodded to one of their lot, a remarkably pretty young woman with light blue hair who was polishing a practice shield, with a vacant look in her eyes. He passed her again as he carried a dummy out to one of the training circles, but she did not so much as look up again, continuing with her quiet and thankless labor. Eckhart would have liked to have someone to spar with, even if it was one of these knight attendants, but he quickly reconsidered it. Though they had noble blood and had gone through the knight's course at the Royal Academy, these attendants had failed to graduate the course, and they all wore stab-sealing bracelets. What a pity. He had hoped to at least see Cornelius, but for some reason, even though Eckhart had heard that his brother was now training more than ever after the thrashing he'd received, Cornelius was nowhere in sight. The straw-filled dummy would have to be his stand-in, as he practiced his swings on it in preparation for the upcoming Trombe extermination, and later on, the fight against the Lord of Winter. And so Eckhart lost himself in his exercises, forgetting his gnawing worry for Myne for the moment as he went through his swings again and again and again, visualizing as best as he could the flawless way Lord Ferdinand executed the same motions, and trying to replicate the same efficient grace in which his master always did everything. He practiced until sweat beaded in his brow, his muscles screamed in agony, and his breathing was labored. By that time, the cool afternoon shadows were beginning to grow longer, and the fluffy clouds coasting lazily up in the sky looked like golden fleas. He wiped the sweat from his brow with his shirt, but hastily covered his exposed abdomen when he realized that he had an audience. The young, blue-haired woman he saw from earlier. She was sitting on the wall that enclosed the training circle, and the moment their eyes met, she leaped down and walked toward him.
I am to lock up the gear room after you leave, my lord,
she said with a towel in her outstretched hand. Eckhart realized that she had probably wanted to go home, but had been forced to wait for him to finish his exercises, even though it was now just him at the training grounds. How selfish of him.
I apologize,
he said with a slight grimace, politely taking the offered cloth and wiping the sweat from his forehead.
I should not have gone on for so long.
Smiling once more, he turned to retrieve the dummy, hearing her trotting behind him. Then she spoke.
I have never seen anyone move with such skill. Your strikes look far more refined than Professor Roffin's.
Eckhart huffed out a laugh and yanked the dummy from its stand. He was sure she was exaggerating, but he was surprised when he saw the clear admiration in her eyes when he glanced at her. Those blue eyes no longer looked vacant, but bright and alert. Eckhart wondered at whatever had happened to her that had made her fail her courses, but in the end decided it was none of his business. And besides, right at that moment, he received an ordinance with an urgent summons from Bernard, Myne's scholar. Suddenly he remembered how he had sent off Myne, armed with only a manablade. A lethal one, yes, but just a small dagger when it came to it, and his heart dropped to his stomach. He cursed under his breath and dropped everything. Then, without bothering to change and leaving it to the attendant to put his gear back, he summoned his high beast and raced toward Myne's house, expecting the worst to have happened, and praying that she would be in one piece when he found her. She was in one piece, but she looked somewhat pale, and there was a certain tension around her eyes, all of which was preferable to her being injured, but barely just.
What happened?
He said, barely recognizing his voice in his ears. He must have looked terrifying as he entered Myne's office, because her eyes widened and she made her way over to him.
Wait, Eckhart! It's not what you think, but...
She motioned toward the table, and for the first time he realized that she and Bernard had been gathered around an object that lay there. The manablade.
Eckhart? What is this thing that you've given me?
Myne said with a look of worry.
What do you mean?
He said, confused.
It's, speaking.
Myne said in a volume that highlighted her panicked state.
Excuse me?
Eckhart said, not believing his ears.
What do you mean, it's speaking?
He looked at Bernard as if asking the scholar to clarify. The man shrugged. Seemingly, he was as confused as Eckhart felt.
It is as Lady Myne says. When she arrived, she was having a terrible argument. It was unlike anything I've ever heard before. You can ask the servants.
Eckhart glanced at Fran and Feline, who had accompanied her. Both looked troubled, but nodded. He frowned and picked up the manablade.
It's not speaking now, though.
He poured in a bit of mana and noticed no great change from earlier. The fake stone in the pommel hadn't even changed colors, as it should have done if Myne's mana had surpassed his own.
Surely there must be some kind of mistake. Maybe you misheard?
Suddenly, there came an angry voice, eerily similar to his, coming from the manablade.
Master, are you implying that my mistress is lying or is delusioned?
Eckhart was startled, and so shocked that he dropped the manablade. Said manablade clattered on the table's surface, yet it continued on, sounding outraged.
She said I could speak, and here I am, speaking. How can you refute that now?
Why is it doing this?
Myne asked him, latching onto Eckhart's arm and sticking close to him, as if using him as a shield. What was she expecting it to do? Explode? Eckhart didn't blame her. At this point, an exploding manablade was just as crazy sounding as a speaking one. He'd never in his life heard of something of this nature happening with a manablade. Trying to regain his composure, he spoke calmly.
It never spoke before. Like I told you this morning, with Heidemarie and I, or when Heidemarie and I created this, the blade was imbued with dark attribute mana to prevent blood from coagulating, so its cuts wouldn't be able to heal. No one except a person exceeding my own mana could heal someone's cut with their blessings, while at the same time keeping the user who registered their mana with the blade safe. We imbued it with no other significant attributes.
Though it could be used as a lethal tool, Eckhart had told Myne to slash at Lady Dolores' face, or to her vital points if it came to it. This manablade had only one purpose, to be used in defense as a force multiplier. He had figured it would be the perfect tool for Myne to take along since it was so compact, and once she had infused it with her mana, it would not harm her should it ever be used against her.
Yes, you told me as much, but I never thought you'd given me something that was alive!
She exclaimed.
Eckhart, why didn't you warn me?
But it's not alive.
He said.
It's just a tool. I beg to differ.
The manablade spoke up, or rather the face stone at the pommel replied.
I am no tool. I am my mistress's protector.
Do you see?
Oh.
Sorry.
You
No,
see?
Myne.
Myne said.
He did this as I was speaking to Lord Hartman and your brother, and in the presence of the other ladies.
Oh no, what mischief has this thing gotten Myne into?
If it had run its mouth, it had probably made things even more difficult for Myne, and in which case it would be all his fault for having given her a manablade to begin with. What world of trouble had he gotten them wrapped up in? Lord Ferdinand would certainly not approve. Eckhart closed his eyes and took in a deep breath as he squeezed the bridge of his nose.
Myne, we need to talk. Everyone else out of the room.
His eyes closed as he waited for everyone to leave, not trusting himself to say or do anything until it was just them two. Once everyone was gone and the doors to Myne's office were shut, he opened his eyes with a tired groan. He glanced down at Myne, and for the first time in a very, very long time, she was looking up at him with something like trepidation. Those golden eyes of hers were apprehensive and reminded him of last winter, when Lord Ferdinand had ordered that he go visit his future goddess of water. They had known each other for some years, of course, but they never had the occasion to meet or talk under any other pretext except when it had to do with their work assisting Lord Ferdinand. On his first official courtship visit, she had appeared calm on the outside, but had looked up at him with unease, as if she was afraid that if she did or said the wrong thing, he'd somehow lose it. The very air around them had been tense for days until he had finally managed to break through to her. But now, that same look was in her eyes, and seeing that felt all kinds of wrong. Myne should never have to look at him like that, ever.
Am I muted? No, okay. Did I somehow do something terrible?
She said, biting her lip worriedly.
I swear I didn't mean to. It's just, I was so angry and
She sighed and dropped the nearest chair, cradling her head in her hands.
I don't even know what to apologize for, honestly.
Eckhart sighed and similarly sat down.
You have nothing to apologize for, Myne. Now that I think about it, it was a stupid decision that I made in the spur of the moment.
He huffed out a short breath and patted the crown of her head consolingly.
I should never have given you a weapon when you weren't trained to use one. And more importantly, I should never have I should never had you handle a tool like this when you haven't had proper magecraft lessons.
But all you had me do was add a bit of mana to register it.
That's no excuse.
He said, shaking his head.
You have so much mana, and I have gotten so used to seeing you perform rituals in the temple and large-scale blessings with the Knight's Order that I forgot that you had no understanding of mana control. You don't even wear a ring. Damn it. I was just so afraid for you that I lost my reason for a bit.
Myne looked up at him with those large liquid gold eyes of her, and was quiet for the space of a few heartbeats. Thankfully, the slight trace of fear that had been in her eyes moments ago was all but gone now. Instead, there was a quiet grace in them as she took his hand from where it rested in her head, and she squeezed it reassuringly with both of her small hands, and gave him a small smile.
You were worried. I get it. Please stop beating yourself. I simply don't understand it, though. Why do you think Why do you think it started speaking? Was it because I gave it mana?
I could explain it if you'd only if you'd only get over your shock already.
The manablade replied from the table.
One truly can't be expected to bear all this hysteria while one is trying to do one's job.
Startled, Myne squeezed Eckhart's hand convulsively, but Eckhart, deciding to address the manablade himself, gave her a reassuring squeeze back before releasing her hands. Part of him knew that he should call Lord Ferdinand, but he was hesitant to interrupt his master's family time. Eckhart knew how, despite outward appearances, Lord Ferdinand truly cared for Lord Sylvester, and had been in anguish during the time his brother had been in the Jarib, so he deserved some uninterrupted time. Therefore, crazy though it might seem, he decided to hear what the manablade had to say for itself. He stood, planted his hands on the polished tabletop, and leaned forward.
Very well. Explain yourself, Manablade.
He ordered.
Certainly, my lord.
The manablade replied.
Lady Myne poured a stream of mana into me while wishing with all her might that she could cut through the hypocrisy of those around her. She wanted to record, word for word, what other people said, and then play back the recording against them to remind them of their hypocrisy and shame them. She wished for a brilliant mind which she could recount the past events with as evidence to counter her enemies. For she didn't wish to fight with the sword, but with the word, confronting her foes with nothing but the truth.
Eckhart closed his eyes in disbelief, thankful that Myne stood behind him so she wouldn't see his deep consternation. What in the world had she been thinking? Something like that would get her killed in noble society.
Is this true, Myne?
Eckhart asked without turning to see her. Noemi.
You're muted, Noemi.
Oh my god. I started the whole line and everything.
Silly goose.
Yes, but not pouring my mana while thinking about these things would actually make it happen. I was just trying to pour it in, hoping that it would defend me. As if you weren't actually with me, I figured that the more mana I had, the more effective it would be.
I was indeed born out of my mistress's wish for your protection.
The manablade corroborated.
Is that why you are speaking with Eckhart's voice?
Myne asked.
Yes, as I was created with his mana, it was very easy to do so.
Eckhart reflected on those words. So she had wished he'd been with her at some point during the tea party after all. A tiny something in his chest sparked into life at the casually spoken confession, but Eckhart pushed that thought aside and focused on what was actually more important. He turned to face Myne.
What happened at the tea party?
He asked softly, not wanting to scare her again.
All this talking blade business has distracted me a bit, and you haven't told me why you were so upset. So much so that you ended up creating a monstrosity like this. I resent that.
Complained the manablade from the table.
Quiet.
Eckhart said over his shoulder.
I am not talking to you.
The blade went quiet as if obeying his commands. He returned to his chair and waited for her to speak. She took a deep breath and began telling him about the tea party. How it had been uneventful at first, but had somehow ended up with her meeting the rest of the troublesome trio, Lord Hartmut and his own brother, and Eckhart's own brother Cornelius. She had felt uneasy while the tea party had gone on, and had felt as though she was being watched. It had gotten so bad that she had taken hold of the mana blade, as if in preparation for an attack of some sort. Since he had told her that mana blades grew as one poured mana into them, she had come to the conclusion that it would be best to start pouring mana into her mana blade. She had kept her hand on it, even when they had finished the tea party and begun strolling the gardens. To her surprise, Lady Dolores had attached herself to her, and the hypocrite hussy had acted as if they had never seen each other before, and as if the one that had brought chaos upon her tea shop was altogether another person from another reality. It had been so bad that Myne had thought for some time that she must be crazy or stupid. How could she lie to her face so scandalously? Then they saw Cornelius and Hartmut, who had been similarly strolling the gardens. Lady Elvira had introduced them, and had stood by her side almost protectively, but that had not saved Myne from having to talk and be civil to them. Oh, it had been awful. How had the three of them feigned to be so friendly and civilized? She almost wished she could have crushed them to see if they writhed and twitched in the same way she had remembered them doing in her tea shop. She'd bitten her tongue and played the part, but she had been pouring mana into the hidden blade at her reticule, all while anger had raged in her heart. And that was when the mana blade had come to life, speaking all the things she had wanted to say with all her heart, and once it began speaking, it had not ceased.
What did it say?
Eckhart said with bated breath.
Shall I play back the incident?
The mana blade said, ready to obey.
No!
Myne exclaimed, half standing from her seat.
Betrayus!
Veritas.
Veritas!
Veritas.
It's Latin. It means truth.
Okay, no. It's almost just like Viti at this point. Betrayus. Remain silent.
Veritas.
Veritas! Remain silent till spoken to.
Very well.
The mana blade replied, sounding very disappointed.
Veritas.
Eckhart frowned.
Does it have a name now?
No! It just slipped out.
She exclaimed.
But anyway, it's rude to continue calling it, don't you think?
Eckhart was at a loss of words at this strange turn of events. He decided to move past that for now and asked her to proceed with the story.
The worst of... Oh my god. The worst of those was Lord Hartmut. I don't like him. Not at all. He sets my teeth on edge to the point that I wish he were You were there to strike him down.
And that was when it started speaking?
She nodded.
Everyone looked around thinking that you had suddenly arrived, but then it became clear that the voice was coming from my ridicule. I had to excuse myself at that moment and rushed back home.
And that's all?
Eckhart asked. Myne nodded and melted into her seat, looking both relieved and exhausted. Myne.
Oh, that's all.
Eckhart crossed his arms and considered his next course of action.
I believe
He said at last.
that it is best that we show Veritas to Lord Ferdinand. He is the only person with enough knowledge to determine whether we should keep this speaking manablade.
Myne nodded. But then...
My mistress does not desire... I'm sorry, let me start that over. My mistress does not desire to meet with Lord Ferdinand.
The manablade said, disobeying its orders to not speak up.
She does not wish to hurt or be hurt by him again.
Myne gasped. Her eyes went wide with shock and her mouth opened as if to deny the remark, but she was rendered mute. Eckhart, meanwhile, wanted to tear out his hair. It seemed that however much he'd wanted to avoid the subject, it was time for him to address this truth about Myne and her feelings for Lord Ferdinand.
By the Supreme Pair, what a day for revelations.
End of chapter. Notes. The manablade's name, Veritas, is a nod to the speaking mirror in I Am Only a Stepmother, but my daughter is just so cute. It's a light novel, webcomic. It's delightful and wholesome. Go check it out. One of the characters is a speaking mirror, so his name is Veritas. So kind of liked his whole thing. And also, finally, a special thank you to Fergie for bouncing ideas back and forth with me and proofreading this chapter. Thank you.
I love that you used the Latin name for truth as the name.
Yeah, apparently that name, people really liked it. I also got comments on the fanfic, like they were like, "Yeah, that's a great name for truth." I was like, "Yes." Mm-hmm. There is an hospital or something like that called Veritas around here, so I was like, who cares? It's not the name of a hospital. But yeah,
it can send you to the hospital.
It can send. Yeah. Ooh, Teal doing what Teal does. Nice. Love it. So yeah, we got Veritas. So not quite Sten Luke, and he doesn't have Ferdinand's voice, but he does have Eckhart's voice, which could lend itself to other hijinks and other situations, maybe.
At least this manablade isn't the belonging of a certain airhead who relies on it to do all her testing for her.
No, instead it belongs to a person who wants to keep her thoughts secrets most of the time.
No, and they can't make it shut up. This is the
exactly.
He just speaks
That's actually scary.
It is
that
scary.
It won't follow orders.
Horrifying.
Yeah.
Veritas.
My goodness, Noemi! You speak a Latin-based language and you can't get that right.
Shut up.
Verité. Not just say verita.
Verité. That's its name now. Verité.
You can say it like that. It sounds nice too. Doesn't matter.
I'm just so glad that it doesn't have Ferdinand's name. I would have cried if it had Ferdinand's name. It would have been so cruel to Myne.
Oh, yes. Oh. Yeah, I didn't want to have more cruelty. Like, I keep telling you guys, like, it's not all hurt. It's not all hurt, no comfort. We do have some fluffy, okay? We do have some like funny things here. If I had made him have Ferdinand's voice, it would have gone into like so sad and depressing. I was like, nah, let's, yeah. So,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. Crazy Matan says, a recording Manitou has unfathomable malicious uses. I know, right? Even simply recording other nobles' words and using them could be severely punished because Myne is not a noble, let alone an archnoble. Yeah, it's dangerous for her to have this.
She has all the power.
Yeah, and we haven't yet learned of all the full capabilities of Veritas, but we will get to it. Yeah, there's other stuff. There's other stuff. But meanwhile,
By the power of speaking sword, I have the power.
You have the power.
She does have the power. She has the speaking stick.
The speaking stick. So, we're gonna read one more chapter before we end today, and it is the chapter called Weightless. So, basically, they have to get to the bottom of this manablade. Like, neither of them are scholars. Bernard doesn't even know anything about it. He's a scholar, so they have to go and ask somebody about
The biggest scholar around.
yeah, right. So notwithstanding what Veritas said, that Myne. So we'll see. Let's see. They're gonna go investigate. So, Weightless. So this is actually one of my favorite chapters. So the next couple of ones. So I hope you enjoy this one.
The next couple ones are really good.
Right. Yes. So
they get really good.
Nice. Yeah, I look forward to them. But today we're gonna read the first one of those couple of chapters. Chapter 37, Weightless, Myne. Summary. A roller coaster of emotions. Myne had forgotten what it felt like to be weightless and become one with the wind, the clouds, and the birds in the sky. But at the exact moment that Eckhart's large hand pulled her body closer to his, and his winged wolf began moving into a slow run, her heartbeat kicked up in anticipation for the giddy, joyful feeling that she got every time she left solid ground behind her, and she let herself enjoy the fact that she was, after all, living in a fantasy world.
Here we go.
Eckhart murmured behind her, his breath tickling at her ear. His arm tightened around her waist as his wolf sped into a gallop before his high beast's wings flapped once, twice, and then leaped into the bright blue morning sky stretching high above them. The sun was barely peeking over the eastern mountains, and the moment they passed the city boundaries, its bright beams blinded Myne as it rose in the horizon. Soon, however, he corrected their course and turned facing northward, with the sun to their right. It was a perfect morning. A cold one, to be sure, but Eckhart had told her to dress warmly, maybe even put on her face-stone armor underneath the clothes. She was grateful that Ferdinand had, a few years ago, gifted her with such a marvelous tool and had taught her how to use it. On their northbound flight, they ended up having to fly through a patch of clouds for a short while, but she was not bothered too much by it. Instead, she enjoyed the unique feeling of condensation forming across her exposed skin.
We should reach Eustace's camp well before the fourth bell rings.
Eckhart said.
He is situated near the duchy border, but I'll get us there soon. So just enjoy the flight.
Myne nodded wordlessly and watched the world go by, letting herself bask in the beauty of that autumn sunrise, letting the stress that had accumulated over the past couple of days roll off of her with the blowing wind. With all the meetings at the castle and the exhausting tea parties, fending off the curious stares and question of noble women she'd just met, was a skill she was still nurturing. Then add to that Myne's personal problems and drama into the mix. This day trip was a welcome, though unexpected, respite from her day-to-day labors. Yesterday, she'd certainly had no plans to spend the day like this, but here they were, and it was all thanks to Veritas. Let's jump back to the night before.
My mistress does not desire to speak to Lord Ferdinand.
The confounding manablade said, disobeying its master's orders to keep quiet.
She does not wish to hurt or be hurt by him again.
Myne's mind went blank, trying to come up with a way to explain that particular bit of truth away, but absolutely nothing came to mind. In her panic, all she could do was change colors as she first paled and then blushed furiously. And when she finally managed to look towards Eckhart's imposing figure, she found herself faltering at the sight of those watchful blue eyes of his, which pinned her in place and made it absolutely impossible for her to even think of lying to him. No, I mean,
That's not what.
Myne began flailing desperately. But then Eckhart suddenly stood up and made his way toward the talking manablade. Each footstep on the hardwood floors echoed through the room from the forceful way he stomped towards the sentient blade.
What will it take for you to be silent, Blade? Do you not respect your master's wishes?
He thundered, grabbing Veritas from where it still lay on the desk's polished surface. It seemed that Veritas did not know when a question was rhetorical, for it quickly replied,
My apologies. Master's instinct of self-preservation has willed me to speak in spite of my orders to remain silent.
Myne wanted to die from embarrassment at hearing Veritas casually reveal information she would rather much remain unsaid. She was thankful that Eckhart had his back to her, for her face grew redder by the second and she gave in to her need to bury her face in her palms.
Enough.
Eckhart exclaimed while grabbing the offending blade. He opened a random desk drawer and threw it inside before slamming the drawer shut.
You'll stay quiet there until you learn to behave yourself. And you will remain silent, or I myself will throw you into whatever that says, never to be seen again.
The blade protested, and while Eckhart was busy berating the manablade, Myne took advantage of the distraction and slowly stood, thinking that it would be best to sneak out. She'd have Frank convey her excuses to Eckhart, but she really couldn't take much more. On her way towards the doorway, however, she froze when he heard him speak up.
Where are you going, Myne?
She turned and gave him a sheepish smile.
I was going to talk to Fern about tonight's dinner.
We're not done talking, though.
Eckhart said, leaning against the desk and crossing his arms.
And besides, you don't have to worry about on my behalf about dinner. I'm in no shit. I'm sorry.
Potatoes.
I am in no state to sit down to our usual formal affairs.
Myne blinked, realizing for the first time that he was both dusty and sweaty and was not wearing his usual noble attire. He also sounded somewhat worn out.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry for interrupting you.
She said, taking her seat again.
Did we call you Did we call you while you were in the middle of something?
Eckhart waved his hand.
Don't worry about it. I was only sparring.
I see.
Myne spoke and let the words float out into the empty space between them. They were silent for a moment, during which time Myne fidgeted a little in her chair. She couldn't help but wonder.
Would it be too much to hope that he forgot what Veritas said?
At last Eckhart heaved a heavy sigh.
About consulting Lord Ferdinand. Is what the manablade said true? Would you rather not see him?
His voice sounded sharp and stern to her, but she didn't miss the hint of worry that was also mixed in. Still, at being asked such a direct question, Myne couldn't help but look away. She couldn't lie to him, but she also couldn't force herself to face Eckhart, as she admitted to her one weakness. While staring at the floor, she weighed the situation in her head before eventually answering in a whisper.
I'd rather not bother him But if you believe he is the only one that can tell us more about how this happens, and potentially how to make it stop, maybe it would be best to let him see it.
Her chin sunk to her chest as she managed to eke out the last few words. Eckhart stayed quiet as he rubbed his chin in thought, eyes staring off in the distance.
There may be someone else who might know about these things. But he's not in the city, let alone the central district at the moment.
He made his way back to her, but did not sit. Instead, he brought a finger to Myne's chin and raised her face while he looked into her eyes.
I know it might be uncomfortable, but would you at least let Eustace see it? He's a very competent scholar in his own right, you know. There's little about this world that he does not know about.
Myne considered it. Having Eckhart know about her deep-rooted feelings for Ferdinand was bad enough, but she did not want yet another person to know about her truth, especially not someone who was as close to Ferdinand as Eustace. Myne had no idea how the blade had come to life and started talking, and did not know in what other ways he would begin to spill the secrets of her maidenly heart. It had drawn from her own memories and played back the audio as faithfully and clearly as if she had an eidetic memory. What if it started playing out her and Ferdinand's last disastrous argument? Far beyond her own personal drama with Ferdinand, there was a more urgent need to understand this manablade. What if it ended up revealing even more personal details? Details about her life as a commoner, or even her secret about her past life as Urano. If those details got around, who knew how things might end up? Myne was thinking how she could proceed when Eckhart sighed, bent closer to her so that they were almost at eye level, and called her name.
Myne, you don't need to worry about Eustace.
Pulling her face back, she looked up at him with a facial expression that read,
What do you mean?
Grinning at her reaction, he continued,
I have known the man for many years, and despite all his eccentricities, I can vouch for him when he is being serious. Regarding you and Lord Ferdinand, he will not bring light upon such. He will not bring light upon that which Verbigen has hidden. In fact, he has been silent on this for many days now.
Myne inhaled, horrified at the implications of the delicately phrased statement.
Does Lord Eustace know already?
Eckhart was still for a couple of heartbeats before he nodded once. His deep blue eyes never strayed from hers, though, which meant he was not lying. Myne knew, just knew, that it was over. Everything was over. Her life was over. She was as good as dead. How low had she fallen now, that she was so deeply, pathetically in love with a man, and now his closest companions also knew of this fact?
Be a lady! Be a lady! Big dignified like Lady Florencia. Unruffled like Lady Elvira. Sit up and straighten your spine just like Rosina. And the tutors taught you to remember to smile.
Myne closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and after counting to 3, opened them again. She smiled at Eckhart as beatifically as she could. It took everything in her not to react emotionally to this deeply mortifying experience and not bolt out of her chair and run away while covering her face with her hands. But in the end, she settled for the least uncomfortable course of action. To go the very next day to see Eustace, who was at the moment in the northernmost point of Ehrenfest. A long flight north was nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to another meeting with Ferdinand, where every word from his mouth, every glance her way, every movement of his tall, lean figure made her ache with longing. She could not, would not, risk having him know the truth from her manablade's prattling about how much she missed him, how she dreamed about him, and how her heart was torn between her pride and her need for him. Ferdinand must not be consulted about this blade, ever. So it was that Myne found herself on Eckhart's high beast flying north en route to Lord Eustace's camp. Which, hold on a second, you guys. I have a call that I have to take.
Magpie has a phone call.
All right. Hey. All right, so we're back. All right, so we're back. All right, so we are back. Sorry about that. Let me just go back a little bit.
Hope
So
you
it
all
was.
enjoyed the hi-fi meme. Anyway,
So it was that Myne. All right.
I think so.
So it was that Myne found herself on Eckhart's high beast, flying north en route to Lord Eustace's camp, which was located deep in the mountains, next to what Eckhart had described as a fairly large lake. She had never seen a large body of water since her arrival to this new world. Rivers, brooks, springs, yes. Never a lake, let alone the sea. As they flew, she wondered if there could possibly be fish there waiting to be caught. Sweet, flaky, tasty fish. She leaned forward a little bit and watched the golden rain-ripened fields below them, eagerly glancing about for signs of this lake, in spite of the fact that they were still many miles away from their destination. Still, the sight below them was very interesting. Early as it was for her, she would ordinarily be getting ready for her morning bath at this hour. There were already men and women busy gathering in the harvest.
This makes me feel very hungry for rainbow trout.
Myne?
oh yeah, it's my turn.
Mhm.
Around this time last year, I was performing the Harvest Festival.
Myne said.
Soon, it will be the night of Shitsaria, and the winter will be here not long after.
Eckhart hummed in agreement.
Mother told me that you are planning a party of sorts during the night of Shoots area. She said you are inviting many people. Is that correct? Is there any particular reason for the gathering?
Myne nodded.
Yes, we are inviting several friends and your mother for a dinner party to celebrate Lord Ferdinand's return to high society.
In all honesty, she was now dreading the event. She could hardly remember how things had ended up like this, but in one of the many business meetings they had had with Ferdinand before Lord Sylvester woke, the subject of his return to society had come up. Elvira, who had also been present at the time, had joyfully seized the opportunity to celebrate the event and suggested that they throw a large gathering. She had even said that having Myne and Eckhart be the hosts would further bolster Myne's position in society. Ferdinand had readily agreed, and with a straight face too, acting entirely as if all the painful and awkward moments the two of them had shared had never taken place. Well, Myne would have to show him. He'd find that she was now a proper noblewoman, dignified, strong, and she quickly turned to look over her shoulder at Eckhart.
You aren't coming, right? To the party?
Her eyes pleaded in desperation. She did not look forward to facing this gathering alone, but having Eckhart as her pillar of support would make things infinitely better. But would he come? Eckhart chuckled and nodded with a smile.
Of course I am. I was planning on coming from the start.
Oh,
Why?
oh, good. I'm so glad.
She said, sighing in relief that Eckhart was going to be there to help support her.
Me too.
Eckhart said, but for an entirely different reason.
Eustace and I have been waiting for very many years for Lord Ferdinand's return to noble society. I would not want to miss this for the world.
Talking was difficult when they were flying so high and at such a high speed, essentially having to yell at each other over the sound of rushing wind. So the rest of their morning went by in relative silence, broken now and then by passing remarks on the scenery, the weather, and so on, until at last they caught the blue and hazy glimpse of a distant mountain range. They neared the mountains and flew up, 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 over peaks lightly covered in snow. However, they did not descend. Instead, they hovered, looking out at the now mountainous landscape ahead of them. Myne dared a peek down and saw a narrow valley covered by thick forest just below them.
Are you up for some fun?
Eckhart asked all of a sudden.
Fun?
Myne asked with some trepidation in her voice. Eckhart nodded, but that was all the clarification he gave. Suddenly he smiled mischievously.
This is my favorite part. Hold on!
Before Myne could ask what he meant, she felt his arm tighten around her waist just before she found herself looking straight down at the ravine below them. She stiffened as she stared into the dark abyss from that dizzying height. It was like being atop a roller coaster, looking down at the track, dreading yet anticipating that first steep drop. She inhaled a stuttering breath, but she didn't have the chance to scream as they plunged into the fearsome emptiness. Down, down, down they went with nothing but the sound of wind in her ears. They were going so fast, she couldn't draw a breath. She couldn't even scream. And it wasn't just one drop. Just when it looked like they were about to smash to their deaths, they swooped back up again. Eckhart shouted joyously at the drastic swing of momentum, yet Myne felt like she had left her soul behind. On the second drop, she finally remembered how to scream, and in her wild panic grabbed onto the flying wolf as they went back up. Eckhart flew in and out of the narrow ravine at an alarmingly high speed, and Myne wondered if perhaps the Eckhart she knew, the brotherly, dependable Eckhart, was actually a lie, and underneath his polished noble veneer was an insane adrenaline junkie. She couldn't ponder on this too long, though, because she was too preoccupied with holding on to the high beast for dear life as they continued racing down the ravine. The ravine widened somewhat, and Myne realized that they were now following a river. They swerved between stone pillars with narrow gaps, and Eckhart made no visible attempt at slowing at these turns. In fact, he whooped and laughed behind her.
That's radical rascal. That rascal. There we go.
They rushed past
There you go.
Good. They rushed past evergreen-covered mountain slopes, flying so close to the trees that it felt like they were moving faster than normal as the trees whizzed underneath them. Through the haze of terror, Myne registered the fresh, crisp scent of the forest, and felt the cool mist on her cheeks as they passed dozens of waterfalls that seemed to plunge from hundreds and hundreds of feet above them. At one point, it was so misty and the visibility so poor that Myne was afraid they'd crash into a tree or a boulder. Still, Eckhart flew them just as quickly and deftly as if he could see through and beyond the mist.
Look!
he said, pointing off into the distance.
There's a lake! We're almost there!
That meant their terrifying flight was almost over. The valley widened dramatically, and they came upon a large blue lake that sparkled with the light of the morning sun. But it wasn't merely the sight of the sparkling waters that made her eyes widen. Myne blinked in surprise and disbelief as she stared at the beautiful sight before her. All thought of the previous death-defying experience vanished. Somehow, her past and present life overlapped at that moment. She could have sworn that the shimmering panorama in front of her was the same one she had seen once when her mother and she had traveled up to Lake Ashi the autumn before she was buried under an avalanche of books. Of course, there was no snow-covered Mount Fuji in the background, appearing as if it was floating on the clouds. Nor did she see the famous floating torii that was so popular at the Hakone Jinja shrine. But it was such an uncannily similar sight that she wondered if her mind was playing tricks on her. Or maybe it had just been that long since she'd seen a lake, and now this one particular lake looked like the last one she'd seen in her previous life.
Yeah, come on. Flip. How odd.
The illusion was eventually shattered as they continued northwards. She looked back at the spot out of sheer nostalgia's sake, but as the angle had changed so much, it no longer looked like the memory from her past. It was just an ordinary lake after all.
You alright there?
Eckhart asked as they cruised over the sparkling water.
You seem awfully quiet.
What am I supposed to say?
Myne exclaimed, slapping at his arm.
That was terrifying! I thought we were going to be killed! Oh Lord, I would have died! If not from smacking into the roots, then from a heart attack!
Eckhart gave a hoot of laughter.
That was nothing. Back when we were younger, the two of us would regularly make flight up here to gather ingredients. Try making that trip in the middle of a blinding rainstorm or at night.
The two of you?
Myne thought, curious. Did he make the trip up here with Ferdinand? Or possibly Eustace? Eckhart clarified without her asking.
Hyde Marie and I would race each other to see who made it to the lake the fastest. Anytime I came with Eustace, it was no fun. He said he was too old for such shenanigans. But she was always one to indulge me in these games.
Trying to imagine the scenario in her head, Myne asked.
Who usually won?
I did, of course. Yours?
Of course, Eckhart answered, sounding a little smug.
Liar! How can I trust you pulled that stunt?
Myne said, just to spite him. She really was upset at his recklessness.
Well, you had nothing to worry about. We are here. And you're still in one piece. No, so stop complaining.
He slowed his winged wolf as they approached the northernmost end of the lake. He pointed to a sandy beach ahead.
And that's where we usually set up camp.
They alighted at the sandy lakeside, and Eckhart helped her down from his high beast. Myne felt so very grateful to be back on solid ground that she almost felt like bending down to kiss it. She didn't, of course. Instead, she stretched and patted at her windswept hair. Meanwhile, Eckhart shouldered the various bags it brought along, including her own satchel which contained her writing things, as well as the cloth-wrapped Veritas, who had thankfully been quiet during the entire ride. Eckhart dismissed his high beast and turned her way. He somehow noticed that she was still a little shaky on her feet, so he extended out his hand. Myne was still upset at him for having endangered them both with that little stunt, but she couldn't remain angry at him for too long, not when he was so nice to her. whenever he wasn't trying to kill her, of course, and especially not when he looked as joyous and carefree as she'd ever seen him. She blew air out of her cheeks like a petulant child, just to make sure that he knew that she was still upset. But nevertheless, she put her hand in his large, strong palm and allowed him to lead her up the sandy trail that led from the lakeside into the quiet forest beyond. End of chapter.
Bum.
Yes, so they're going to visit Eustace, and they're at the lakeside.
Eustace in the mountains.
All right, so that's an interesting development because I guess you guys kind of, those who had not read this yet, you probably expected that we would have another Ferdinand moment. But I figured, no Ferdinand moments.
No,
Thank God.
The sword was very clear. I mean, the knife was very clear that Ferdinand could not be involved in this.
Yes. And so we have them going to the next best person, who is Eustace.
The crazy scholar.
Another crazy
totally
scholar.
A better.
Oh yeah.
Totally a better person.
Right. I wonder what Eustace will have to say when he sees or hears about Veritas. Now I did put a note here. I said, I know you all want it and I keep dragging it out, but I promise Eckhart and Myne will have the talk real soon. You know, the talk where they address Myne's feelings for Ferdinand. It will happen.
The talk.
I mean, it's kind of hard to have that talk.
Yeah, it is hard.
That talk is not happening for reasons.
Yes. So
we need the plot to proceed first.
Neither one of them really want to.
Yeah.
Neither one of them really want to confront this. The elephant in the room.
The elephant.
Well, they'll want eventually.
What a big elephant in the room, but they have to address it at some point.
And they'll address it.
But they will. They will soon enough. Just not now. Not right now. Because a lot of people, when we were reading this in the comments, they were like, "When is he gonna find out? When is like what is gonna be his reaction?" I'm like, just wait. So yeah, I had them wait for like about a month, 2 months, while I wrote up this couple of chapters.
No joke. She had us starving, guys.
Yes, unfortunately. So yeah, you guys, I always keep saying, like, you guys are so lucky that you get to read it now without having to wait a month between updates.
We starved, guys.
Yes, you
we were
starved.
dying.
But now you're eating good, okay? So there. So yeah, so in this AU, the note continues, Eckhart is sensitive enough, or at least fond enough of Myne, to know that it is not a good idea to try to pry things out of her by force, but they will have to address it at some point. And finally, to end this note, is my most profound gratitude to JC Fergie for beta proofreading this chapter. Fergie, by the way, was really good at making the roller coaster ride seem more thrilling and stuff. So yeah, if you enjoyed that little bit,
Fergie!
that was Fergie's hand at work.
Praise to Fergie.
I do want to point out, Eckhart asked if she was up for some fun, but never got an answer before he was just top gunning all over the place. Consent is important, people.
Thank you for pointing that out. He's an insane adrenaline junkie, okay? And adrenaline junkies will do things that are just, anyway.
Guys, remember, don't be like Eckhart.
Yes.
I mean,
What's wrong with showing your girl a nice
a nice ride?
Too many things.
What's wrong with showing your girl a nice?
Too many things. Too many.
I mean, if only the freaking Hybees had seatbelts, then probably I would have been okay. But no, there were no seatbelts. He was basically just like grabbing onto her. That was how she was being kept into the Hybees. He was holding onto her tight, and she was basically grabbing with like all her little fingers to like the Hybees as best as she could. But it could have been pretty lethal. So yeah, Eckhart deserves a good scolding. We like Eckhart, but he does deserve a little bit of a scolding for that. So
We love him too much.
yeah. So we got some comments. Yukihime says, "Poor Myne." But says Eckhart is so cute when he's mischievous. Yeah, so we always get Eckhart being like very, being murder puppy kind of deal in canon. But he's also a bit of a goofball, even in canon. Like he's kind of a little bit goofy sometimes. So kind of wanted to show that, yeah, like in spite of him being Eckhart, he still has like a little bit of a playful side, Don't want to. I wouldn't want to ship our girl with somebody who does not know how to have fun. Like, yeah, at least have some. Like, it can't be just like stern, angry, want to murder people. I did not. That was not appealing. So I was like, let's make him a little. Now that he's slowly healing from his past trauma, let's make him like remind us that he at one point was like this crazy, reckless night kid who, he
was a softie.
Yeah. Yukihime points out he really knows how to make a girl's heart race. Yeah, except that there's a fine line between making her heart race and giving her a heart attack.
And he was going for heart attack.
There is always a theory there is always a theory in movies that like, oh my god, put her in a dangerous situation and she will love you.
Oh
and
my
like
gosh.
I feel like you are going for that.
Oh boy, yeah. I wasn't really, but maybe.
No?
I mean, if this were like a romance between Eckhart and Myne, probably, but it's not. I mean, they're just friends right now.
No?
So no, they're just friends. They're just friends.
I mean, yeah, at this moment because it's lovers, but still.
They're just
I'm
friends.
not saying anything. I'm just shipping them.
They're just friends. You can ship, but they're just friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Just by the way, I really hope I want to be my next chapter.
Oh.
The two great chapters next.
Oh.
One of my favorites.
Okay, so if you want to read the next two chapters, which are also two of my favorites, it is Lakeside and Moonflowers. You guys who have read will know.
God.
If you want to be, you better join in quickly. It's first come and first serve on the day of. You say you want to read it, but you have to be there to claim it when I get there.
Yes.
So okay, Yukihime. So
you get in here, and the first thing you say is you scream, "I want mine!" That's when you get it.
I will do that.
I mean, right now people are fighting over Myne. Patrick is lucky that nobody's trying to steal his role of Eckhart. But gentlemen, if you would like to join us, you can also nab the Eckhart role if you so
You have
desire.
to beat me. You have to fight me for him.
You do. You have to fight him for it. Yes, of course, in a fair game of rock paper scissors. But yes. Yeah. So again, we're gonna be doing the next read will be on. Let me see, Wednesday, 4 p.m.
Yep.
4 p.m. Pacific.
4 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah. So. Hope you guys can join in. Anything else that I need to remind everybody before we end today's stream?
Have a nice day.
All right, thank you. Have a nice day to you too. Again, if you want to join us, hop on to my Ko-fi. I should probably put the link. I hardly ever put the link. Ko-fi, the Chattering Magpie.
Like, subscribe, support your magpie. Send her all the monies.
Monies, shiny things,
Yes.
all of those things shall be greatly appreciated. Here is the link. Since remember, this channel does not monetize. This is just entirely for fun. But if you want to support our endeavor and want to hear more stuff, do join in there. You can do a one-time donation. Yeah, you can do that, and it'll make me very, very happy.
You know, Magpie, you should probably put that link in the description of the video
It
so
is in
people
the
who are watching
description.
the replay later.
It is
It
in
is
the
actually in
description.
the descriptions.
Everything
Good
is in
job.
the description. I even put the link to all of my fanfics, not just A World Away. All of my fanfics are linked there. So
You are learning to advertise yourself. Congratulations.
Yeah, I know. Thank you. I feel accomplished now. But I have been doing that since we started. Since we started A World Away, I have been putting all the links there. Also, if you are following A World Away again, and you're updated, I just released chapter 103 last night. I worked really hard on it. So do go and check it out. I think Teal and Noemi haven't yet read it, so go and read it right now. Let me know what you think.
Oh God, I don't have time today though.
No problem. Whenever you have time, you can just catch up.
Tomorrow.
Hey, Magpie,
Hmm?
in voice chat, Red Tempest posted a pretty nice meme of Noemi.
Of me?
Right.
Oh, come on.
Oh, Noemi. Well, Noemi, what were you doing? You were like having like 15-minute internet lag or something. I mean, 15-second internet lag or something. By the way, Teal does ask on the YouTube chat, do highlights count as shiny things? Indeed, they do count as shiny things, Teal. Thank you so much for all the shiny things. They're the best kind of shiny things.
Good job, Teal. You're awesome.
Yay for Teal.
Dog.
Yay!
For Teal. Remember, Teal did these while she had a headache and she was feeling very sad. So do send her lots of love and appreciation as well. Okay, so that...
I love Myne.
So you guys, I had so much fun reading. Please join us. You don't want to miss the next read along. It'll be fun. I promise you it'll be fun. So, 2 of my favorite chapters are coming up. So, until Friday. Until Wednesday, you guys. Or if you want to join us
One of them days.
Yeah, or if you want to join us for a Hannelore chit chat on the other channel, do join us, okay?
Noemi, what the hell are you doing?
All right. Hope you guys have a good one. We'll see you later. Say bye-bye, gang.
Bye-bye, gang.
Ciao.
Ciao. Adios.
Okay, I'm also leaving you guys.
All right.
See you in a few days. Bye.
Bye.